Hi everyone, I'm back today to talk about this year's Hugo Awards finalists. In between the time when I filmed my last video about the Hugo Awards and when I posted that video, the dates of Worldcon, which is where the Hugo winners get announced, that got moved from August to December, which means that now I have a bunch more months for the Hugo Awards reading project, which is kind of both good and bad because, well, it's good because I have more time to read all the books now, but on the other hand, it means that this project could take up my whole year if I let it, and I don't really want that to happen even though it's something I enjoy. So I thought about any changes I want to make, and the only thing I'm really going to do differently is I think I'm going to add in one more category from what I talked about in my last intro video to the Hugo Awards. I'm going to also read works by authors in the Best New Writer category, and maybe for some of the series, maybe I will read multiple works from those series, which I just didn't have time to do last year. So last year when I was reading for the Best Series category, I just read the first book in every series. So the series are all different lengths, as you'll see, so I'll sort of make individual decisions on that. So the short list for this year's Hugo Awards got announced yesterday morning. So in this video, I'm just going to be going over who the finalists are and talking about, well, first of all, how did my predictions do? I only really did predictions in Best Novel because that was the only category I felt like I'd read widely in. And also, how excited am I or am I not to read the books in these categories? I've been thinking about whether I want to give myself any additional rules for this reading project. These are just going to be personal rules. If you want to do this too, just make up your own rules, do whatever you want, read whatever categories you want. I'll link down below to the entire Hugo shortlist, so if you want to read from categories that I'm not talking about, like young adult or short story, you should go ahead and do that. I'm just not going to be doing those categories this year. So because I read so many more new releases in 2020 than I did in 2019, obviously there are going to be a lot more works that I've already read on this year's shortlist, and because of that, I think I'm going to give myself the pass that if I read and reviewed something or talked about it in a wrap-up in the last year, which is basically the amount of time I've been doing the channel, I'm probably not going to reread that work. I'm also going to give myself one optional pass to not read in each category that I'm reading from, just in case there's something I just really don't want to read for whatever reason. I might not use that pass in every category, but I'm giving myself permission to still do what works for me, even though I'm trying to do kind of a comprehensive reading project here. Because I'm talking about 4 categories and they each have 6 nominees, it could take me a really long time to get down this list, so I'm not going to talk in depth about every book here. I'll probably focus on the ones I personally am not familiar with and talk less about the ones I've already talked about on the channel or that I already know a lot about. I will try to link to all the works down below, so if you're curious about something and I didn't really talk about it or you want to know more about it, you can go and do that research for yourself. So let's start out by talking about the Best New Writer category. I think the rule for this one is they have to have made their debut in the last 2 years, so either in 2020 or 2019. This is probably the category where there were the most works that I hadn't heard of, so I felt like this would be just a good category to read some novels from that I wasn't personally familiar with, because as you'll see, the Best Novel list has a lot more things that I know about. So these are going to be the finalists for the Astounding Award for Best New Writer. From what I remember, this award is technically not a Hugo, but it's voted on at the same time and is presented at the same time. But yeah, just so you all know, not technically a Hugo. So this category is an award for the writer and not for the work, so there might be authors in here that have more than one work published already, but I've just selected works that I think will make sense to read for this category. So first we have Lindsay Ellis. Her debut novel is Axiom's End, which is apparently an alternate history first contact adventure, which that sounds like it could be pretty fun to me. I think from looking at the description, it's set in 2007 or something like that. Honestly, as long as it's not first contact adventure with like tentacle zombie aliens, that sounds like something I would probably like. And yeah, that is a book that I made the mistake of reading once. Then the next finalist is Simon Jimenez. He has a book called The Vanished Birds. It was a bit hard to find a description about this book. It does seem like it's science fiction. The tagline was, "A mysterious child lands in the care of a solitary woman, changing both of their lives forever in this captivating debut of connection across space and time." So don't really know what to expect with that one, but you know, more science fiction that I haven't heard of before. The next author has a book I have heard of, Micaiah Johnson, with The Space Between Worlds. The description for this one is, multiverse travel is finally possible, but there's just one catch. No one can visit a world where their counterpart is still alive. Enter Kara, whose parallel selves happen to be exceptionally good at dying. From disease, turf wars, or vendettas they couldn't outrun. Kara's life has been cut short on 372 worlds in total. Okay, there's more of the description, but that kind of gives you an idea of the setup. So it's kind of a multiverse science fiction story. I think it might get into a bit of a mystery, but I'm not sure. Okay, next, this might be my pass in this category. A.K. Larkwood. Their debut, The Unspoken Name, I talked about in a wrap-up. I didn't do a dedicated review. This is a book that I was really excited for. It's about a character who's kind of, she's not explicitly described as an orc in the book, but it's sort of from an orc-like race. She is raised as a priestess who's supposed to get sacrificed at age 13 or something like that, and instead she gets rescued by this sorcerer. The setup was really interesting, but just the book itself left me really, really flat, even though I liked the setting and the setup. So I read it pretty recently too. I can't remember if I read it in the very end of 2020 or the very beginning of 2021 right now, but it was in the last few months. I don't feel like I really need to or want to read this book again, so that's going to be my pass in this category. I think I've read it recently enough that I can talk about or think about how I feel about it compared to the other works in this category. Okay, this next one I'm not super thrilled about either, but it's Jenn Lyons. I read The Ruin of Kings, and yeah, I mean, I didn't dislike it as much as some people I've seen, but I just thought the middle was really, really messy. The beginning was amazing. I loved it. Then it kind of all fell apart and then sort of slightly pulled itself back together. I've been saying I'm gonna read The Name of All Things for ages now and just haven't gotten to it. So let's just say this Hugo's shortlist is just gonna make me have to actually follow up, and I will read The Name of All Things, which I've been saying I was going to do anyway. So it's kind of nice. I like when something is making me do something that I meant to do but just haven't gotten myself to do yet. Very convenient. And then the last writer who's a finalist in this category is Emily Tesh. She was actually a finalist last year, I think, as Jenn Lyons might have also been. You can be eligible for 2 years for this award. And so she has a duology of novellas called the Green Hollow duology, which I've seen around. I wasn't super interested in reading it, to be honest. The first one is called Silver in the Wood, and I think it's about some sort of wild man and green magic. I don't know too much about it, but I guess I'll be reading that. All right, now let's talk about the Hugo Award for Best Series and who the finalists are. I didn't make a ton of predictions in this category, but a lot of the series that I did mention did show up. I didn't rewatch my last video to see how many of these I actually mentioned. I think I did mention Murderbot Diaries, which did indeed get nominated. I'm very excited about that because I've been meaning to read Murderbot already. Yeah, so I guess now I'll probably just read the whole series unless I hate it. This series was on my anticipated 5-star reads video that I did recently. I'm really expecting to love this series. Hopefully it hasn't been too hyped, but yeah, I've really been meaning to get to this for a while. So I'm very excited that this is one of the finalists for Best Series. Unless I absolutely hate it, I'll probably read the whole series this year since I have until December. Next is another series I mentioned but just didn't think was going to show up on the best series list. That's the Lady Astronaut series by Mary Robinette Kowal. Just because the first book in the series already won a Hugo for best novel. I don't know, I was actually, I think, wrong about the fact that a series and a work from that series couldn't show up on both I'm not saying this well. For some reason, I thought that if there was a series getting nominated for best series and also a work from that series was getting nominated for Best Novel, that both those things wouldn't end up being able to be finalists in the same year, but as we'll see, that's actually not the case, which is fine by me. I just misunderstood how that worked. So Lady Astronaut is a finalist for Best Series. Really like that series. I did a dedicated review for The Relentless Moon last summer. It's been a bit longer since I read books 1 and 2, so even though I have read this series before, maybe I'll just reread the first 2 books in this series since it's been a while and I enjoyed them anyway. Next, we have the October Day series by Seanan McGuire. Seanan McGuire shows up on this list basically every year because she has so many series and writes a lot of books in them. I think this is either the second or third time this series has been a finalist, and it hasn't won yet, but this is also a series I was meaning to get to. It's just I'm in the middle of the Encrypted series. I thought I shouldn't be reading more than one long-running Seanan McGuire series at the same time, but I might have to now. I'm kind of okay with that. My real fear about reading the October Day series right now is, well, two things. First of all, this series is currently 14 books long. I think no matter what, I'm not going to read 14 October Day books this year, even though Seanan McGuire's books are usually pretty easy to get through for me, even so. So I will read probably more than one, but less than 14 before December. Here's the other problem. A lot of people have said that the first two aren't that good. It makes sense to me because I think the first one was her first ever published book, and she's written like a billion books since then, so you'd hope she kept improving her craft. But I'm really feeling wary of series where people say, yeah, it takes like 2 or 3 books for it to hit its stride, because I'm such a completionist. I have to start at the beginning, but then if I don't like it, it's hard to continue. I don't know, it's just tough. So I'm a little worried. I'll try to read at least like 3 of them, I guess. If it gets good in book 3, then I should try to read the first 3. But what if I really don't like the first 2? I'm just gonna have to see how things go. I hear this a lot about Dresden as well. People are like, yeah, it takes a while for the series to hit its stride. But I'm just thinking like, but I'm going to start at the beginning. Like, just don't tell me that. I don't know. Maybe it's better that I know. Okay, next is the only series that I really don't know that much about at all, and that's The Interdependency by John Scalzi. It's a space opera series, and the first book is called The Collapsing Empire. The first book is called The Collapsing Empire. From what I've seen, this seems like it's just kind of a fun science fiction series, which I sometimes like and sometimes I'm kind of neutral on. So yeah, I feel fine about trying this one. Again, it's a trilogy. I'll read the first one and we'll just go from there. Next is a series that I don't know if it has a chance of winning, but I'm really, really happy it made it as a finalist, and that's the Daevabad trilogy by S.A. Chakraborty. I don't know how I feel about rereading this. This is one of my favorite series. I don't know how I feel about rereading it right now because I reread a lot of it before book 3 came out last summer, and then I obviously read and reviewed Empire of Gold when it released last summer, so it's been less than a year, but I don't know, I should probably reread some of it for the project. I'll kind of decide what I want to do about that. Because it's a series I know very well and have reread multiple times before, it matters a little bit less for this project, but I still want to be a completionist, because as I said, that's how my brain works. The last series that's a finalist for the Best Series Award is the Poppy War trilogy, which I think might be my pass in this category. I really did like the Poppy War and the Dragon Republic, and I really didn't like The Burning God. I had a hard time with that book. Honestly, I should have DNF'd it. But the reason I'm giving myself a pass on this, even though I think I conceivably could reread The Poppy War, as I haven't read it since pretty close to when it came out a few years ago, the thing is, I felt super traumatized at the end of both The Poppy War and The Dragon Republic. While I enjoyed reading the books, it was just emotionally a lot for me, and I just don't know if I really want to do that again. So this trilogy might be my pass in the Best Series category. Next, let's go through the Best Novella category. I haven't read any of these, obviously, because I don't read a lot of novellas. I'm a little disappointed in the finalists here because they look great, but they're all from Tor.com Publishing, and that means they were probably all bought by, I don't know if it was one editor or multiple editors, but by the same publishing company, which means there's probably a similar aesthetic to a certain degree in what's getting bought and what's getting put out there. I kind of wish that it had just come from more diverse publishers, so I could have gotten more of an overall spectrum of what's out there. But I'll try to go through these really quickly just to give an idea of what each one is about, because they're mostly new to me. So first we have Ring Shout by P. Jelly Clark. I've been really wanting to read this author's Cairo series, which also starts out with novellas, and then he has a full-length novel coming out. but this is not from that, so I guess this will be the first thing I read from him probably. So Ringshao is a dark fantasy historical novella that gives a supernatural twist to the Ku Klux Klan's reign of terror. And I think it's set in Macon, Georgia in the early 20th century. The next one I had heard of and had even checked out from the library at one point but didn't read, and that is Empress of Salt and Fortune by Nghi. This is a feminist fantasy story about a woman who's sent for a political marriage and becomes empress, and it's told from the point of view of her handmaiden. And that's basically most of what I know about it. The next one is also going to be a little tough for me. It's Come Tumbling Down by Seanan McGuire, which is the 5th installment in the Wayward Children series. I know the Wayward Children series is super popular on BookTube. Out of all the Seanan McGuire series, this is probably the one that has interested me the least. I think they kind of stand alone, or at least each novella focuses on a different character or something like that. I know it's a portal fantasy about children that have, gone to other worlds and come back or something like that, but I don't really want to start with number 5. I don't really want to read 5 of them necessarily either, so I don't know what I'm going to do about this. I don't really necessarily want to take a pass because I do like Seanan McGuire. I don't really know how to handle this one. Let me know if you guys have any thoughts. Then we have Riot Baby by Tochi Onyebuchi, who I have not read anything by yet. I actually didn't realize this was a novella. For some reason I thought it was full length. So I'll read the description for this one as well. Because I'm not super familiar with these, I'm finding it easier to just read some of the descriptions from the cover copy rather than to try to summarize things I haven't read. Ella has a thing. She sees a classmate grow up to become a caring nurse, a neighbor's son murdered in a drive-by shooting, things that haven't happened yet. Kev, born while Los Angeles burned around them, wants to protect his sister from a power that could destroy her, but when Kev is incarcerated, Ella must decide what it means to watch her brother suffer while holding the ability to wreck cities in her hands. I've heard good things about this, I think. I don't know too much about it. Like I said, I didn't realize it was actually a novella and not a full-length novel. The next one is Upright Women Wanted by Sarah Gailey. I didn't put down a description for this. I have heard of it. I think it's sort of a future Western thing about librarians. The description actually seems quite interesting. My only hesitation here is I've read one book by Sarah Gailey, and that was Magic for Liars, and I really did not care for it at all. So I'm hoping that was just that book in particular and that I'll enjoy this, but I'm not going to take a pass or anything on this because, other than just having read and not liked one book by this author, I don't really have a reason to. The last finalist is Finna by Nino Cipri. Here's the description. When an elderly customer at a Swedish big box furniture store, but not that one, slips through a portal to another dimension, it's up to 2 minimum wage employees to track her across the multiverse and protect their company's bottom line. Multi-dimensional swashbuckling would be hard enough, but those 2 unfortunate souls broke up a week ago. This sounds like it could be kind of funny. I've never heard of this, haven't heard of the author, so we'll see. I feel like this is a very diverse list of novellas, which is awesome. Like I said, I just wish some of them had been from a different publisher, so maybe I could get to see a different editor's taste in novellas. Otherwise, I think this should be interesting. I don't know. I'm not normally a reader of short fiction. I don't know if I will like any of these just based on the length, and a lot of them do seem to be strongly thematic. And I tend to struggle with stories that feel like they have a punchline, which is what a lot of short fiction is, rather than something that explores a topic over a longer length of time. So we'll see. This is going to be an interesting list for me. All right, now let's talk about the best novel finalists. I think I basically called it. Except I did forget that the first Murderbot novel came out last year, so we have Network Effect by Martha Wells on this list, which I'm already planning to read the entire Murderbot series for the best series category, so this works out well. I wouldn't have wanted to start necessarily with Network Effect, but I'm going to be reading the whole thing anyway. Then we have The City We Became by N.K. Jemisin. I probably won't reread this one. I know there have been really strong opinions on this where it seems like some people, I even saw this in the comments in my last video, I had one person that hated it and one person that really connected with it. Again, I was kind of neutral, which actually happens to me a lot with N.K. Jemisin. I think that she's a fantastic writer and I appreciate the quality of her writing, but for some reason the way she tells stories, something about it I enjoyed the Broken Earth trilogy, but most of her other works haven't really worked for me, and it's something about the way I think she takes the epic and makes it very personal in a way that just doesn't seem to click with my brain, I think. Anyway, I don't really want to reread The City We Became, but I did call that it was going to be on the list. Piranesi by Susanna Clarke. Yep, I called that one. I was actually really wanting to reread this because I've heard the audiobook is awesome, so I'd like to listen to the audiobook as my reread. Harrow the Ninth by Tamsyn. I'm actually really surprised. I did mention this in my last video, but I didn't think that Harrow was going to make it onto the list because I saw, even out of people that loved Gideon the Ninth, people seemed really torn between whether they liked Harrow the Ninth or not. I actually really did like it, but it is not a book that stands on its own, and it's a book that I feel like I'm not going to even know how I feel about it until after I read book 3, which isn't coming out until 2022, I think. So yeah, honestly, I'm pretty happy to reread both Gideon and Harrow for this. Gideon was my favorite Hugo finalist last year. I wasn't expecting book 2 to make it onto this list. But, no complaints other than I'm just surprised. The Relentless Moon by Mary Robinette Kowal is also on this list. That was the first one that I predicted. Part of me really thinks, before doing any of the reading project, that this is the book that will take the Hugo Award this year, but I'll, reread the others. Actually, yeah, the only book on this list, I should get to the last one first, but the only book on this list that I haven't read is Network Effect. So yeah, that is interesting. Last year, I got to try a ton of new things with this Hugo Awards reading project, and now already it's all stuff that I've read, so I'm not sure. One of the things I liked about doing this was getting to experience new things. So yeah, I'm still doing it, but I don't know how to feel about that. So the last book on the list of finalists is Black Sun by Rebecca Roanhorse, which I also called. I felt like it had been getting a lot of buzz and that this was just something that was going to end up on the list of finalists. I read and reviewed this book really recently, so probably won't reread just because I don't think I need to. I just read it. So like I said, mixed feelings. I like a lot of the books on this list. It's just I've read them all except for one, so it's going to be different than last year. But I hope if you guys haven't read some of these books and you feel like doing the Hugo Awards reading project, which is a totally free-form, self-paced thing that I'm doing that really doesn't have any rules, so just do whatever you want, read Hugo finalists, let me know how it's going. That's basically what we'll be doing from now until December. I mean, that's not all I'll be doing, but I will be doing it. I have no plan for how I'm going to pace these out. I'll just start and see how quickly I get through things and hope I don't end up with a ton to finish really late in the year. Like last year, I'll do dedicated reviews for everything I read for this project. Normally, I kind of decide on whether to review things just based on how I feel after I finish. The only thing is for the novella, since they're short, maybe I'll combine those reviews into 1 or 2 videos. So overall, I think this is going to be a fun year. I do like this list. It'll be interesting to see how this all goes. Thanks so much for watching. Please like this video and subscribe if you want to follow the Hugo Awards reading project or just see, my other videos. I will link to all the finalists down in the description, as well as any reviews that I've done of them so far.